Well, Syracuse, a typical end to what has been a disappointing year for football, but also a couple of great wins for the basketball team. And again, it seems as though the curse of New York State seems to keep going. Another downer by Buffalo. Oh well. How typical it was that it ended up like this for the football team. Seems as though it was the old saying in the Bible, the Lord giveth, the Lord taketh away, which is exactly to say how it was for the football team this year. He gave us that win against Toledo, especially the controversial extra point. But it seems as though things even out. And that's what happened this year with the football team. After we trounced West Virginia there in the Dome. Thing is, West Virginia is still going to be the Big East representative in the BCS, believe it or not. Even after we trounced them, because you know what? We fell flat on our face the rest of the year. Boy, did we fall flat on our face. I mean, I don't know. I didn't think the SU football team had that many shortcomings. But apparently we did. And boy, were they exposed against Pittsburgh on Saturday. 6 times, including 2 times in the first minute or so of the game. We turned the ball over. Heck, we had more turnovers in that game that's at Cameron's Bakery in Auburn. And I tell you what, you ever get to Cameron's Bakery, buy the Half Moon cookies. They're out of this world. But it seemed as though even with all those miscues, Syracuse was in it almost up until the very end. Then you see Nassib get hit. And even though it was called a fumble, it was a real wounded duck that came out of his hands and fell right into the Pittsburgh defender who took it for a 6. A typical end to a disappointing year. 5 straight losses. Heck, had we beaten Pittsburgh in that game, we could be playing where Pittsburgh's playing in the bowl games against SMU. But if we were playing SMU, we might have trouble matching up with June Jones and his ponies. They have a real potent offense there for SMU. But whatever. You gotta wonder about Marrone's job status now. Swoons like what happened to the football team gets coaches fired. And speaking of swoons, I'd rather have that with a lady swooning over me than see a football team swooning like Syracuse. Oh, brother. Of course, I'd like to hear the woman go, when she comes next to me. But, that's wishful thinking. All about the basketball team, though. Nice week. Especially that big throwdown against former Orange assistant, now Eastern Michigan coach Rob Murphy. And that was a real touching scene there in the beginning of the game. It was the first game since Bernie Fine was fired. And Boeheim got a prolonged standing ovation and a big hug from Murphy. Even if the Orange trounced Eastern Michigan 84-48. And then again, Boeheim is defiant as ever in the post-game interview. But then he softened his stance after that big win against Billy Donovan in Florida. And boy, that was a big win. What a performance by Brandon Trish and the other 2 members of the Big Three, Chris Joseph and Scoop Jardine, leading the Orange to a clutch victory over a very good 3-point shooting Florida team, 72-68. Boeheim softened his stance, and also he said he pledged to work with the advocates for children who'd been molested. But the truth is, I kind of think, there still is this thing as due process. There still is innocence until proven guilty. And I still stand behind that because, it hasn't really been fully shown that Bernie Vine did these things. And I want to say one more thing about advocacy groups. I mean, I know you want to make your feelings known when certain people of stature make things like this or make comments. Especially because, I mean, it seemed as though all of you were clamoring for Boeheim to be fired. But you know, advocacy groups always speak up, especially when an important figure says something they shouldn't, like a slur or something. I mean, 90 to 95% of the time, these people don't mean what they say. You know, it comes out in a fit of anger. But yet, when they say it, all you advocacy groups get up in arms about it, and you pretty much crucify them for the rest of their life. Let me tell you one thing, don't do it with me. I mean, I'm not racist, I'm not that, and I mean, I am one who respects everybody, but I mean, if I somehow slip up, please don't crucify me, as it's unfair to label somebody. Not saying that I have done it, but please, you know, people like that don't deserve it. The players don't deserve it, everybody doesn't deserve it. But I mean, you gotta think before you act. And that's what doesn't happen a lot in today's society. But now, that's it. And of course, what's upcoming for Syracuse basketball this week, it's a pretty decent Marshall team, and also George Washington, on the day when Seneca Falls celebrates It's a Wonderful Life. And now, a change. Ta-da! Into the Bills uniform I go. But you know, I gotta wonder, the same amount of time that the Orange have been having problems, the Bills have been having problems. Well, is there a curse on the New York teams now? I mean, I know for the Chicago Cubs, there's the curse of the Billy Goat. And for Boston, up until a few years ago, it was the curse of the Bambino. But what is it now, the last few weeks? The curse of New York State? Or what's going on? I mean, both Buffalo and Syracuse were fire and brimstone teams. But now, I mean, you see what happened with Syracuse down the stretch. But now it seems as though Buffalo's shortcomings are being exposed big time too. And again, on a game that was blacked out, the shortcomings reared their ugly head again. Especially with one of the league's top running backs exposing them. Chris Johnson with a big day for the Tennessee Titans, including that big touchdown run early in the game. But you know, it was sort of a breakout game for C.J. Spiller, who's filling in for Fred Jackson the rest of this year. Spiller had a nice run, even though he acted like a hot potato right there near the end. And yet he fell on the ball just before it crossed the end line of the end zone. What a lucky bounce. And then he ran for another touchdown, but it was called back due to a dubious holding penalty. What is it with those referees? Oh, wait a minute. Oh, yes, he was holding. Oh, I might as well flag that. Yeah, it was pretty dubious. There didn't look to be much holding on that. But again, that's why it seems as though the refs like to ruin games. You know what I mean? I mean, Hasselbeck didn't have to do much passing. Only about 140 yards passing. It was Johnson in the running game for the Titans that did in the Bills. Plus also Buffalo's inconsistent play with the passing game again. Even if Fitzgerald did have a pretty good game. But still, on that drive where they could have driven to win the game for 4 straight incomplete passes, even if he had to throw it down to stop the clock. But boy, did Buffalo have that many shortcomings? It's just like 3 years ago all over again. Buffalo start out strong, then they collapse down the stretch. And that's exactly what's happened this year. We started out like gangbusters, now we're 5-7 and pretty much out of the playoffs with 4 games remaining. Including this coming Sunday, we go to Southern California to take on the Chargers, who are also fading and also look like they're looking for a new coach, as it looks as though Norv Turner is going to be fired at the end of this year. You'd better hope some of those Santa Ana winds helping us. As you know, look what those Santa Ana winds have done across Southern California and also parts of the Southwest. Boy, it's like a hurricane hit. But hopefully a hurricane can hit and straighten things out for the Bills. We like to close this season on a winning note, even if it does look as though, again, it'll be a dozen years now since playoffs. Ugh. And that's what I have to say about these last few weeks. Ugh. Let's get it on track, Buffalo, and of course Syracuse. Let's hope our recruiting base kicks up, and let's hope we have a better 2012 football season. I'm Ken Haas. That's the story, and that's it for this week. Until next week.